The Simpsons saw 9/11 coming years before it happened. They called Trump's presidency over a decade early.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
They knew Disney would swallow Fox whole long before the deal was ever discussed.
The Simpsons from 19 years ago predict the future. It shows the entrance to 20th Century Fox movie studio.
People laughed those off as jokes until reality caught up. Now there's one more prediction, buried in an old soccer episode, and it lines up with the 2026 World Cup almost perfectly.
This match will determine once and for all which nation is the greatest on earth, Mexico or Portugal.
If The Simpsons is right again, the final may already be decided. Number 8. Donald Trump becoming president. Lisa Simpson walked into the Oval Office and said one line that aged in the strangest way possible. She was president of the United States, and America was in trouble. Then she told her staff, "As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump."
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
That episode aired in March 2000. Donald Trump did not become president until 2016. Trump was already famous at the time, but not for politics. He was a New York businessman, a real estate name, a tabloid magnate, and a celebrity who knew how to keep cameras pointed at him. His name meant towers, money, loud interviews, and headlines. The Apprentice had not even premiered yet. To most people, President Trump sounded like the kind of wild future only The Simpsons would throw on screen for a laugh. But the idea was not pulled from thin air. Around 1999, Trump had already played with the thought of running for president. He formed an exploratory committee with the Reform Party and talked about a possible campaign in public. Still, for most Americans, it felt more like celebrity noise than a serious path to the White House. The writers looked at a country where fame was starting to feel like power and pushed that idea to the edge. Then real life caught up. 16 years later, Trump entered the race for president for real. At first, many people treated his campaign like another stunt. Then he kept winning. He beat experienced politicians who had spent their lives preparing for that level of power. He stayed in the news every single day. Scandals, arguments, protests, debates, and shocking headlines followed him everywhere. But none of it stopped the campaign from growing. In 2016, he defeated Hillary Clinton and became the 45th President of the United States. And once that happened, every strange Simpsons scene started getting a second look. Number 7. Disney buying Fox. In 1998, The Simpsons dropped one of its strangest jokes so quietly that a lot of people could have missed it. The episode was called "When You Dish Upon a Star." Homer gets pulled into the world of Hollywood celebrities after meeting Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger. He starts enjoying the good life, ruins it in classic Homer fashion, and near the end, the show cuts to the Fox studio lot. That is where the strange part appears. On the studio sign, 20th Century Fox is shown as a division of Walt Disney Company. At the time, it looked like a quick background joke. Nobody in the episode stopped to explain it. Nobody treated it like some huge announcement. It was just sitting there on the screen, almost like the writers were making fun of the most unlikely thing they could think of.
Hello, old lady from Titanic? You stink!
And back then, it really did sound unlikely. Fox and Disney felt like completely different worlds. Disney was the polished family empire. It had princesses, theme parks, family movies, and a carefully protected image. Fox had a sharper edge. It was louder, rougher, and more willing to push jokes that made powerful people and big companies look ridiculous. The Simpsons itself was one of the best examples of that. This was the cartoon family that mocked American life, television, politics, religion, celebrities, and corporate power every chance it got. So the joke made sense. What if even Fox, the home of The Simpsons, eventually got swallowed by Disney? For years, that was all it was. A funny little jab at Hollywood. Then the real world caught up. In 2019, Disney completed its massive purchase of major 21st Century Fox assets. The deal was worth about $71.3 billion. Disney took control of major film and television businesses, including the 20th Century Fox Studio, FX, National Geographic, Fox Television Production Units, and a larger stake in Hulu. And just like that, the old Simpsons joke became real. But not every Simpsons prediction is that straightforward. Some are far stranger and far darker. Number 6. The Tiger Attack. The next Simpsons prediction was about a live show, a white tiger, and a nightmare that later happened for real. In 1993, The Simpsons aired an episode where Springfield opens its own casino. The whole town gets pulled into the bright, loud world of gambling, money, stage acts, and Las Vegas-style entertainment. Then two flashy performers appear. Their names are Gunther and Ernst, and everything about them is clearly built to remind viewers of Siegfried and Roy. They have the costumes, the stage lights, the dramatic performance, and most importantly, the white tiger. Two over-the-top performers stand in front of a crowd, acting like they have full control over a wild animal. Then the tiger turns on them. The animal attacks during the performance, and what started as a silly casino scene turns into a violent reminder that a wild animal is still a wild animal, no matter how polished the show looks. At the time, nobody saw it as some chilling prediction. It felt like obvious satire. Siegfried and Roy were world famous for performing with white tigers in Las Vegas. Then, 10 years later, the cartoon scene stopped feeling so funny. In 2003, Roy Horn was performing at the Mirage in Las Vegas when one of the white tigers, Manticore, attacked him during the show. Roy was bitten, dragged off stage, and critically injured. He survived, but the attack ended the famous Siegfried and Roy stage show and changed his life forever. Then came the Simpsons scene that people still cannot look at the same way. Number 5. The 9/11 coincidence. One of the most famous Simpsons predictions came from an episode that was never meant to feel dark. In 1997, The Simpsons aired The City of New York versus Homer Simpson. The story sends Homer to New York after Barney takes his car on a wild night out and leaves it parked near the World Trade Center. So Homer has to travel all the way there to get it back. Homer is right there at the World Trade Center, stuck waiting near his car, angry, hungry, and desperate to leave New York as fast as possible. At the time, it was just a funny episode about Homer having the worst possible trip to the city. Then came the detail that people still talk about today. In one scene, Lisa holds up a brochure advertising a trip to New York for $9. The number 9 is large on the page, and right beside it are the Twin Towers. After September 11th, people looked at that image again and saw something they could not unsee. The 9, sitting next to the two towers, looked like 9/11. That single image became one of the biggest Simpsons prediction theories ever. After the attacks, the episode became uncomfortable to air because the World Trade Center was so central to the plot. For a long time, many viewers stopped seeing it on television. When it came back in some places, parts of it were edited or handled carefully because the towers were no longer just part of the New York skyline. They had become part of one of the most painful days in modern history. And after that, the show took its strange predictions into the world's biggest sport. Number 4. The FIFA corruption scandal. Homer Simpson should never have been trusted with the World Cup, and that is exactly why the episode felt funny at first. In You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee, Lisa calls Homer her hero because for once he does the honest thing. That one moment somehow carries him all the way into the biggest football tournament on earth. Suddenly, Homer is not sitting on the couch with a donut. He is on the field in Brazil wearing a referee kit, making calls in front of millions of fans. Then the joke turns darker. The World Cup looks beautiful from the outside. The stadiums are full. But behind that bright picture, the episode shows something rotten. A top official from the fictional football organization appears and openly talks about corruption. He does not act shocked by it. He does not treat it like a small problem. He talks like the whole system has been poisoned by money and power. Then he gets arrested. At the time, it felt like a sharp football joke. Everyone knew the World Cup was not only about goals and national pride, it was also about television deals, sponsors, hosting rights, marketing contracts, and powerful men making huge decisions behind closed doors. Fans loved the game, but many people already believed the people running it were playing a very different game. Then, 1 year later, the real scandal exploded. In May 2015, football's most powerful organization was hit by a corruption case so large it shook the sport around the world. 14 people were charged. 9 were football officials, 5 were sports marketing executives. The charges included racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering conspiracies. Officials and business executives were accused of turning world football into a private money machine. Bribes and secret payments shaped who could sell, broadcast, and profit from tournaments watched by billions. The money was enormous. More than $150 million in bribes and kickbacks had been paid or agreed to. The way it all came out made it even more dramatic. Swiss police arrested several officials in Zurich inside a luxury hotel just before FIFA's annual Congress. The whole image of FIFA changed almost overnight. For years it had looked untouchable. It controlled the World Cup, the biggest sporting event on the planet. Countries fought to host it. Companies paid fortunes to be part of it. Fans planned their lives around it. Then suddenly the headlines were not about goals or trophies. They were about arrests, bribes, money laundering, and corruption. Sepp Blatter was not arrested that day, but the scandal surrounded FIFA while he was still its face. He won another term as president shortly after the arrests, but the pressure kept growing. Days later, he announced he would step down, and the same World Cup episode did not stop with corrupt officials. It also moved straight onto the pitch, where another Simpsons football moment became impossible to ignore. Number 3, Brazil's World Cup disaster. That same episode put Brazil and Germany on the same path for the 2014 World Cup, and in the cartoon, Germany beat Brazil 2-0. At the time, it looked like a simple football joke, but a few months later, the real World Cup came to Brazil, and what happened next was far worse than anything the cartoon showed. Brazil did not just lose to Germany in 2014. Brazil fell apart in front of the world. This was a World Cup semi-final, inside Brazil, with the whole country watching. Brazil had won the World Cup more times than any other nation. The fans were not just hoping their team would reach the final. They believed Brazil had to protect the pride of a football nation. Then, Germany scored. At first, it looked painful, but normal. Big matches have early goals. Strong teams recover. Then Germany scored again. Miroslav Klose got the second goal, and with that, he became the highest scorer in World Cup history. That alone should have been one of the biggest stories of the match, but there was no time to even sit with it, because Germany kept coming. Toni Kroos scored twice in quick succession. Before Brazil could breathe, Sami Khedira added another. Before the match had even reached 30 minutes, Brazil were 5-0 down. 5 goals in a World Cup semifinal against Brazil in Brazil. The crowd went silent in a way that felt unreal. Fans stared at the field like they were watching something impossible. Some cried, some covered their faces, some looked too shocked to react at all. Brazil was not being beaten. Brazil was being torn apart, and the pain was deeper because of what the tournament meant. Brazil had not hosted the World Cup since 1950, and that old tournament had left a wound the country never forgot. Back then, Brazil lost the deciding match at home to Uruguay. For decades, that defeat haunted Brazilian football. So when the World Cup returned to Brazil in 2014, it felt like a chance to fix history, a chance to win at home. But Brazil walked into the Germany match already weakened. Neymar, the country's biggest star, was out after an injury. Thiago Silva, the captain and defensive leader, was suspended. Brazil had lost its most dangerous attacker and the man who usually held the back line together. Still, nobody expected the match to turn into a public disaster. Germany did not stop after the first half. Andre Schürrle scored twice after the break. Oscar scored late for Brazil, but by then, it did not feel like comfort. It felt like a tiny mark on a night that was already ruined. The final score was 7-1. And the strangest part is, the Simpsons did not stop with Brazil losing to Germany. That same episode also pointed toward the one player Brazil could not afford to lose. Number 2. Neymar's World Cup injury. Before Germany ever humiliated Brazil, Brazil had already lost the player the whole country was leaning on. It happened in the quarterfinal against Colombia. Brazil were still alive in their home World Cup. The crowd was loud, and Neymar was carrying the kind of pressure only a Brazilian number 10 can understand. He had already scored 4 goals in the tournament, and for millions of fans, he was the player who could drag Brazil all the way to the title. Then, Juan Camilo Zuniga drove his knee into Neymar's back. Neymar dropped to the grass and did not get back up. This was not time wasting. It was not a cheap attempt to win a foul. He was badly hurt. Brazil still won the match 2-1, but the result almost became secondary. Their biggest star had been carried out of the tournament. The injury was serious. Neymar had fractured a vertebra in his back, and his World Cup was over. That is where the Simpsons connection becomes strange. In You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee, Brazil also has a superstar. His name is El Divo. He is flashy, talented, dramatic, famous, and treated like the player Brazil depends on. He is the kind of footballer who can change a match with one touch, but also the kind people accuse of going down too easily. That sounded a lot like Neymar. Neymar was brilliant with the ball. He was fast, skillful, dangerous, and loved by Brazilian fans. But he was also mocked by critics for rolling, falling, and exaggerating contact. The Simpsons built El Divo around that exact kind of image. In the episode, El Divo goes down during the match, and Homer has to decide whether the Brazilian star is really injured or just pretending again. Then, a few months later, Neymar was lying on the grass in a real World Cup match, and nobody was laughing. And then fans noticed another strange detail. El Divo's boots were later linked online to a Puma-style look. At the time, that did not seem important. During the 2014 World Cup, Neymar was known as a Nike athlete. He had been tied to Nike for years, so any Puma connection in the cartoon felt like nothing more than another random detail. But years later, Neymar left Nike and joined Puma. In 2020, Puma announced a long-term partnership with him. Neymar became one of the biggest football names connected to the brand and began wearing Puma boots. After so many Simpsons football moments came eerily close to real life, one old soccer joke now feels much bigger in the 2026 World Cup. Number 1. The 2026 World Cup prediction. In 1997, The Simpsons showed a soccer match that looked like a random joke. Now, almost 30 years later, that same scene is making World Cup fans nervous. The family is watching television when an advert comes on for a huge soccer game. Not a small match, not a normal friendly. The advert sells it like the biggest game on earth. Then the teams appear. Mexico against Portugal. The match would decide once and for all which nation was the greatest on earth, Mexico or Portugal. At the time, it sounded ridiculous. Mexico and Portugal were not the obvious cartoon choice for the biggest football match in the world. But the scene did not disappear. Years later, fans started pulling it back into the spotlight. The first big revival came during the 2022 World Cup. Fans dragged the clip back online and started saying this could finally be it. Mexico was in the tournament. Portugal was in the tournament. Ronaldo was still chasing the one trophy missing from his career. The old Simpsons scene looked ready to come true. Then it fell apart. Mexico failed to get out of the group stage. Portugal was knocked out before the final. The theory died almost as quickly as it returned. For a while, Mexico versus Portugal looked like a failed Simpsons prediction. But the people who believed it had one excuse left. The episode never said the match had to happen in 2022, so the theory stayed open. And when the World Cup moved to 2026, the old scene found a much stronger home. This time, the tournament is being played in North America. Mexico is not just another team trying to survive. Mexico is one of the hosts. The country is not watching from the outside. It is inside the story, playing in front of its own fans, on its own soil, with the whole world looking at it. And the tournament itself is different. 2026 is the first Men's World Cup with 48 teams. There are 12 groups of 4. The top 2 teams from each group move on, and the 8 best third-place teams also survive. That creates a round of 32 before the tournament reaches the later knockout rounds. That bigger format gives more teams a path. It also gives strange matchups more room to happen. Mexico and Portugal do not just need to be good. They need to survive their groups, avoid meeting too early, land on opposite paths, and keep winning while the tournament cuts everyone else down. Mexico's side of the story already has plenty of fuel. Mexico opened the tournament by beating South Africa 2-0. Then Mexico beat South Korea 1-0. Those wins did more than put points on the table. They made the old Simpsons clip feel louder. Every Mexico win now gives fans another reason to bring the scene back. And Mexico's World Cup story has pain behind it. For years, Mexico carried one of the most frustrating patterns in football. From 1994 to 2018, Mexico kept reaching the round of 16 and falling there. Again and again, the 5th match became the dream they could not reach. Then 2022 made it even worse, because Mexico did not even escape the group. So a deep run in 2026 would feel like a country breaking an old curse at home. And home can matter. Mexico City Stadium, known around the world as Estadio Azteca, sits more than 7,300 feet above sea level. Guadalajara is also high, at more than 5,000 feet. That does not hand Mexico a trophy, but it can hurt teams that are not used to those conditions. The air feels different, Legs get heavy faster. The final minutes can punish players who are already tired. One defender reacts late, one pass is a little short, one run is missed. In a World Cup match, small edges can turn into huge moments. That is the Mexico side of the theory. Then there is Portugal. Portugal carries a completely different kind of pressure because everything around them comes back to Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo is 41 during this World Cup. He is no longer the young winger flying past defenders with wild speed. He is no longer the rising star trying to prove he belongs. He is a legend chasing the one prize that still refuses to become part of his career. He has won Champions League titles. He has won league titles. He has won the European Championship with Portugal. He has lifted the Nations League. He has scored more international goals than any male player in history. But he has never won the World Cup. That is why Portugal reaching the final would become bigger than football. It would feel like the last chapter of one of the most famous careers the sport has ever seen. And Portugal is not just emotion and nostalgia. They have a team strong enough to make the dream feel real. Bruno Fernandes can create chances and score from midfield. Bernardo Silva can slow the game down when everyone else is rushing. Rafael Leo brings speed and danger on the wing. Vitinha gives the midfield control and energy. Portugal has players who can hurt teams in different ways, even when Ronaldo is not the one carrying the whole match. But their path has already shown pressure. Portugal did not open with the clean start fans wanted. A draw with Congo DR made the road feel tense from the beginning. That kind of result does not kill the dream, but it changes the mood. It makes every next match heavier. It makes the Ronaldo story feel less like a smooth farewell and more like a fight to stay alive. If Portugal gets through that pressure, the theory grows louder. The final is waiting on July 19th at New York, New Jersey Stadium. That is the night every team is trying to reach. And if Mexico and Portugal somehow make it there, the old Simpsons scene would explode online in a way few sports theories ever have. But the most unsettling part is not just the teams. It is what happened during the cartoon match. In the episode, the game does not feel like a beautiful football dream. It is slow. It is frustrating. The crowd gets restless. The fans lose patience. Then everything breaks down. The match turns violent. People start fighting. The stadium atmosphere slips out of control. There is no clean, peaceful ending. No perfect final whistle. No calm moment where one captain lifts the trophy and the world celebrates. The old Simpsons scene turns the match into chaos. And because the tournament is happening in North America, some fans have tried to connect that dark version to real-world tension. One of the theories points to the strained relationship between the United States and Iran. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.